Good morning, AFC Bournemouth fans. My name's Sam Davis, and this is Back of the Net, the AFC Bournemouth podcast. And thanks for joining us on this video version once again. And as you can see, we're here with Neil Dawson. Neil, how are you?
I'm very good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. It's been a while since we've caught up, and there are some changes to the background, as you can probably see. Regular podcast viewers will see myself and Jeff, and sometimes Neil, doing it from inside my home. But however, we're now in the Barking Cat Ale House in Parkstone, and we're going to be filming a number of podcasts here. So if you do want to get involved, we've got the resources and the space to have you in our studio. It was voted Pub of the Season by East Dorset Camera for spring 2019. Managed by Mark Ambrose, you'd be hard pushed to beat the choice of ale, cider and craft beer, with a total of 24 different products on tap at all times, and with all cask on ever-changing selections, and 5 out of the 10 keg lines changing all the time. They've got every style you could possibly ask for. It's in Ashley Road. The room that we're doing it in at the moment has got a couple of dartboards. It's at the moment there's this massive Scale Electric set there. Last night they had some kind of competition. Looks incredible. But if you ever do fancy a pint, I recommend the Barking Cat Ale House here in Ashley Road. In terms of AFC Bournemouth, though, it's not been a great sort of 2019 towards the end of it for AFC Bournemouth, was it?
No, we've had. I think we've had a lot better Christmases, that's for sure. I think at the end of the West Ham game, I was slitting my wrists. I don't think I'd ever seen us play so poorly over 90 minutes, probably since Paul Groves departed our beloved football club. So difficult to see any optimism. Yesterday, though, I think we put a smile back on people's faces, so we can't gloss over the fact it was Luton reserves, but you can only beat what's in front of you, and I think we did it very well. So
let's wind back, because obviously we haven't had a podcast of the West Ham game, because that was in the week. Well, that was on New Year's Day, and is that the lowest you felt as a Premier League fan when we lost 4-0 there?
Yeah, I mean, we've had heavier defeats in the Premier League, but we've never had worse performance than that. I was having a friendly argument with someone at the game yesterday, because they said Crystal Palace was worse. And I said, I don't know how you can say that, because Crystal Palace, all right, they had 10 men, but we were knocking on around their penalty area for most of the second half. West Ham, I think they put a stat out on the telly that we only got in their penalty area once in about 25 minutes in that second half. So just I've never seen a Bournemouth team look so dispirited. I imagine it must have been what Southampton fans were watching when they watched the 9-0 against Leicester. We literally contributed nothing on any area of the pitch.
Do you think it was a culmination of factors that's led to us having this lack of confidence? Because obviously people can blame injuries. Seems to be a bit of disunity. Not sure, of course, we aren't in the changing room, but something's certainly gone wrong.
I just think it's really hard to separate out all of the factors. So clearly there's an injury problem. Clearly there's a confidence problem. Clearly we played 3 different tactical setups during the course of the game. So clearly we didn't really have a clear path that we wanted, and I think that just added to the confusion. The substitutions were poor. You looked and thought, well, what's that going to do? I just think we've had a bad run, and that was the culmination of a bad run. But sometimes I think you need a game like that. If you're just losing 1-0 every week and you're coming in and you've hit the bar twice, I think you never really deal with your problems. I think dropping into the relegation zone, putting in a performance that poor, if that isn't the call to arms that the club need, then we don't deserve to stay up.
No, so. I think that's what worked for Southampton really with their 9-0. It sort of kick-started them into action, and I said at the time, I can't remember when, I think it was on the YouTube channel, that I know their penalty decision was a little bit contentious. He seemed to clip his own heels and go down. Not sure what was going on with the arms. However, in a way, I was sort of glad that decision was given anyway, because it makes it a harsher scoreline for AFC Bournemouth, and maybe makes Eddie and the players actually stand up and think, right, well, 4-0 is an awful result, certainly more so than 3-0, and maybe that's the rocket they needed.
Yeah, no, I think, like I said, I think if you lost that game 1-0, then is there any real need to change the system? is there any real need to look at certain players, or for certain players to probably search deep into their own hearts, which I think a lot of them will have done that night. I mean, Jefferson Lerma was awful. How often do you have to? I don't think we've ever said that.
No,
I mean,
shocking.
Dan Gosling looked just so off the pace, and he's someone that, what you know with him is you'll get a lot of effort. Sometimes against high class opposition you don't get the fine touch, but you always get effort from him. He just looked exhausted. I mean, so the players that don't always play well didn't, but the players that do always play well didn't either. I mean, Steve Cook probably had his worst game in a Bournemouth shirt, and again, how often do you say that? So it couldn't. It was just a perfect storm, really. Of everyone. I think everyone was shattered, and then everyone had their worst game, and we managed to turn a West Ham team that had looked woeful into, when they were spraying it around like Real Madrid come the end. So
when was the last match you witnessed as an AFC Bournemouth fan where you thought that, this is us, this is our identity, I'm chuffed to bits with how this game's gone? Seems a long way back. I mean, the second half against Chelsea at home, maybe, where we smashed them 4-0 perhaps, but other than that, it's been a while since we've had that complete performance, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think since we changed our style. So we had a style and an identity. We changed that style and identity into a counter-attacking style, which has been discussed by myself and Jeff and other people on here many times. Since we've changed to that style, we've had some games where we've won really well. So Chelsea's a prime example of that. But I think we had 35% possession in that Chelsea game that we won 4-0. So effectively, we broke really well against Chelsea in that game. In terms of dominating a team and winning, you'd have to go back to not last season, but the season before that. I think. So, or maybe the start of last season when Brooks was on fire, Fulham away. But it's been a long time.
Were you always a supporter that looked at some of the early draws and thought there are some cracks that are being papered over by certain results? I mean, obviously we didn't do very well against Sheffield United first game of the season, Norwich, Newcastle away, we could go on. It seemed that afterwards a lot of Bournemouth fans were very laid back about it, saying, well, teams like that are hard to beat, etc. But to me it just seemed like the cracks had been papered over for quite a long time, and our sort of false league position almost aided that.
Yeah, I mean, when we came out of the 0-0s with Norwich and Watford, with and when some fans were saying that it's just not good enough, the performances weren't great, we'll live to regret it. Yeah, other fans were saying, well, we're 8th in the Premier League. What do you expect? But I think the problem was we had a kind run of fixtures. We played a Southampton team that didn't have an identity. We played an Everton team that didn't have an identity. That enabled us to pick up 6 points. Yeah. We then went into a series of teams that we should have beaten, that we drew with, and then we came out of them into the run of fixtures we all knew was going to be tough, and we got the results that we expected. But we should have gone into those fixtures with 6 or 7 more points, and even if we had that 6 or 7 points now, we wouldn't be worried, we wouldn't be stressed, we would be mid-table. Those were the games that cost us, because you have to win when you've got a fully fit squad and you're playing poorer teams in the Premier League, because you will have that run where you have injuries, or where you have Liverpool, Man City, Tottenham back to back, where you can wipe out a month. That's the problem. So we didn't make the most of it when we should have.
So given the fact that after the West Ham game you went into the relegation zone for the first time in what seems like a long time, what were your thoughts ahead of the FA Cup match? Because there were 2 ways that Eddie could have played this. Well, 3 in fact. He could have blooded the youth, kept our players injury free as much as he possibly could, or he could give them a bit of confidence and play them, or have a blend of both. But yesterday, when the team sheets came out, were you surprised at how strong it actually was?
Yeah, I was staggered. I think we've become the club that you just can't predict anymore. I mean, we used to be the most predictable. You could predict the team every week. You could predict the result most weeks. Now we've become a team where we're more likely to win when we play great teams and less likely to win when we're in poor teams. I never have a clue when I drive to the ground what the team's going to be, even for a Premier League game, and I've always been pretty good at guessing who's going to pick. So all of that's gone out the window. So yesterday again I was amazed, because I thought that team, regardless of whether Eddie wanted to teach them a lesson or whatever, that team looked physically exhausted. And bearing in mind we've never played a strong team in a cup competition on the back of exhaustion and having such an important run of fixtures coming up, because again normally we could have played stronger teams in cup competitions because we were never going to go down.
Yeah.
This year we've got a real threat of going down, which we'll probably come on to later.
Yeah.
But so I'd bet my mortgage that would have been a team with Kilkenny, Dobra.
Big time.
And when my little boy reads a team out to me when we're driving along, I was like, and so I was amazed, absolutely amazed. But I think you can see the method in his logic. So I think had we fielded a reserve team, although having seen Luton yesterday, I think our reserves would have won because they were poor, and then they fielded their reserves. So it was it was a poor Luton side playing their reserves. So I think we could have played a weaker team yesterday, but I think he just thought if we lose that cup tie. Yeah. The club have just got no way of playing their reserves back into form in future weeks.
True. And
also the morale will just keeps going down and down and down. So yeah, play some players back into form, and it worked.
Yeah, it did. So yeah, Bournemouth won 4-0 obviously, and it was good to see some players like Andrew Sermon playing again. Jack Simpson started. Travers started in goal as well, and that's the fourth penalty in a row that he's not conceded.
Yeah,
which is quite a good stat. But twisting it.
Not quite sure what he did, but yeah.
And how did you feel watching that? Did it feel like the Bournemouth of old, or were there sort of certain sort of positive signs there? I mean, obviously the attacking threat was there, but what were your feelings of the game overall?
I think what interested me, and what only time will tell, I think we saw an intent from Eddie to return to the style of football that we used to play.
Yeah.
And I think he will have. I mean, he will have been agonised after the West Ham game. I think he's done some real thinking, and I think he's wisely decided to go back to the type of football that Bournemouth were famous for. Now, only time will tell whether that was just because it was Luton.
Yeah.
But what you could clearly see, which is very different from previous weeks, was the fullbacks were pushed right up the pitch. So it was like watching Francis wind the clock back 4 years. Rico was playing almost as a winger, and he pulled the two wide players into the middle. So Fraser and memories escape me now. Fraser and Wilson, Harry Wilson came right into the middle. So if you think back to the Championship side, that was Richie used to come into the middle and do exactly the same job. So he replicated that style of football. He was able to do that because he had Sermon doing that role that he did in the Championship, where he never attacks.
Yeah, just the anchor.
And if the fullbacks get caught up the pitch, Andrew Sermon's job in the Championship was always to come across and be the fullback, the missing fullback, or step into the back four and let one of the centre backs go across. And that's exactly how we played it yesterday. So and Sermon again, it was wind the clock back 4 years. I mean, he was my man of the match, and I just thought it was superb. Whether or not he could do that, that's what I kept thinking all through the game. Could he still do this in the Premier League?
Well, I mean, if he did, he could probably do it only as part of a 3 rather than with a 2 in midfield. Would you say?
Well, it was a 3 in midfield yesterday, wasn't it? Because Stan was playing as a number 10. So no, he could. What he gives you, which even though Lerma is a better player than Andrew Sermon, what Sermon gives you that we saw yesterday was that first time ball to particularly the left hand side, because he's left footed, and he plays it with pace and in front of the player. And he did it to Rico a number of times yesterday. He gave him a superb ball. Lerma will control the ball and look for Billing, and Billing controls the ball and look for Lerma, and that's the thing that Andrew Sermon brings you. So it's whether or not we can get Lerma to play that ball first time, because it kept what Andrew Sermon did yesterday was he set the tempo of the whole game. But I think it might be a stretch to think he could do that against Liverpool or Tottenham. So.
It's nice to see Phillip Billing, our midfielders popping up with the goals, and Phillip Billing, I think he had a funny game, a few sort of poor moments, but nice to see him get on the score sheet, and he notched a couple in the end. What did you think of him yesterday? Because he had a poor last few games for AFC Bournemouth when he's been on the pitch.
He got sponsors man of the match, which always makes me laugh, because you can all you have to do is, if you score the most goals in any game, you normally get sponsors man of the match. I didn't think he was an awful lot better, to be honest. I thought he was a bit ponderous. He slows the game down. He never quite looks like he knows where he's going to pass the ball when he gets it.
Yeah.
So he's always looking around. He's got the advantage of being taller than everyone else. So
Yeah.
when he looks around, he can see the game from a different perspective. But and credit to him, because both his goals he hit first time really well with his left foot. Be good to see him shoot more from outside the box.
Do you think that's something that Eddie's been maybe encouraging the players to do?
Well, there's all these rumours, isn't it, that they've all been told not to shoot. I think it came from, two different. I think Harry Arter said it once, and then Mark Wilson bizarrely said it when he signed.
Okay.
That he'd been told off for scoring from outside the box. Certainly, we don't shoot enough from outside the box. Whether or not Eddie said it, only he'll be able to tell the answer to that. I think that Billing's got it in him, because he's scored goals for Huddersfield that are very spectacular. So hopefully it's again, maybe they've sat down in the 2 days and it's another one of the things they've decided to do differently.
We've got some music that's just come on here, so what we might try to do is not have a dance, but maybe get it turned down a little bit, so bear with us. Right, as much as I do love that song, I think
I bet you couldn't name it.
No, I couldn't name it. Could you?
No,
Could you?
not in a million years.
Oh,
no.
right. So yeah, it was nice to see him pop up. And Dominic Solanke, we all thought it wasn't going to happen for him after that disallowed header. And Harry Wilson was offside, and according to Eddie Howe, he looked at it and said, well, it didn't really affect the view of the keeper, but I think just his movement that he made sort of threw the keeper off slightly. And obviously it went in, but VAR checked it and it was disallowed. But at that moment you just thought, oh my God, it's never going to happen for him, is it?
I was devastated for him. I thought, I had a feeling he'd score.
Yeah.
When it went in, the whole ground got so excited.
Yeah.
And it was a lovely moment, and all the players ran to him. You just knew when it came up, VAR's checking this goal, you just knew that it was going to be disallowed, because it's just the run of luck that he's on. And had we had that goal given against us and it had stood, I'd have been disappointed. So you had to say that Harry Wilson did run across his line. But had he not scored that second goal, I think he'd have been pelting Harry Wilson in training all week for that.
Yeah, and it was, I'm glad he did. I mean, it was one that trickled across the line, but again, you could see the players run up to him, and it's obviously a sort of monkey off his back. And given the fact that Josh King is injured, he is going to be the shoe-in striker, I think, alongside Callum Wilson, maybe. Really good for Callum Wilson to score as well.
Yeah, I mean, Callum Wilson needed the goal. Callum Wilson's was a pure striker's goal, so it was good to see him score that, because even Solanke's actual goal that stood was quite a scuffed finish. It wasn't scored with any conviction. I mean, I wouldn't want him to start against Watford, but I think it's great that he's done that. It might give him confidence if he comes on. I just think that over the last 3 games, he's not strong enough when he plays to. These next 3 games are crucial to us, so we can't look back and think we got the lineup wrong.
Would you think that I think Callum should be starting up front then, and maybe have a 5-man midfield? Yeah,
I mean, Callum hasn't. Don't get me wrong. Callum, people could say, well, he hasn't been an awful lot different to Solanke, and he hasn't. But he has a pedigree that Solanke doesn't have. So Solanke scored 1 in 57 Premier League games. Yeah, is that the man you want to bank on your future? I don't know. Maybe this goal will help him. Maybe Eddie sees stuff in training. My personal view is I'd have Gosling breaking into the box from midfield with Lerma and one other sat behind, either Billing or Cook. I don't think you can leave Gosling out, and I think he will get more goals than Solanke at the moment if the service is right.
How enthusiastic can you be about yesterday's result, given the fact 1, it was a team from the Championship, 2, they're bottom of the league, 3, they're playing their reserves, 4, they were just poor on the day. Can you take much out of it, and will Eddie be making any changes in his mindset or decisions ahead of the Watford game after that match, do you think?
No, I think he used it as a practice run. I'm hoping he used it as a practice run for the style he wants to play, and I think that will help him. I think it will help all the individuals that played well. I think Eddie's way too long in the tooth to think we've got it cracked on the back of beating that Luton side, but it does you no power of good to get used to. I mean, my dad reminded me that the Hungary side bizarrely that played so well in the 1950s, that they used to warm up for every World Cup by playing village sides or town sides,
really?
And they would just work their system. They'd win 18 or 19-0, and it was something that they did. And my dad reminded me of that last night. God knows why, but I mean, there's no harm in it. There's no harm in people feeling better about themselves and feeling in a bit of a groove, and he got a run out for hopefully pushing the fullbacks higher up the pitch.
Interesting. I mean, do you think Eddie's mindset for these cup games will have changed as a result of that? Because I know that in previous seasons, I seem to remember the Millwall match where we capitulated, lost 3-0, and it was a poor game, but after that we had a terrible run, and it was like all momentum had been lost. Given the fact that this is potentially kick-starting our season now, do you think, going forward, he may change his view about the FA Cup, or will it always be relative to how we're doing in the Premier League?
Well, I got two theories. So there's the first theory that he wanted to gain confidence back for the players. The second theory that was playing in my mind driving to the ground was, I think he was heavily pissed off after the Burton game.
Yeah.
So you could sense it in the things that he said. A lot of fans travelled to that game. I was one of them, although I only travelled from Burton, so I can't.
Not bad.
I'm not claiming any medals. And I think you could see he was visibly hurt after that Burton game.
Yeah.
So we made 11 changes. The players on the pitch were good. I mean, Lloyd Kelly played. Yeah. Andrew Sermon, who we talked about yesterday, played against Burton and didn't look anywhere near as good as he did yesterday, because I think you can look good in a side that's made 5 or 6 changes. You can't make 11 changes. So Gavin Kilkenny, great prospect. He got took off at half time against Burton. He couldn't have looked more out of sorts. So I think Eddie was so disappointed after that Burton game. I did wonder whether that might be the catalyst for him doing what most Premier League teams do and change 5 or 6 players, not all 11.
Yeah.
So.
It's very easy to get consumed by the negativity, I think, when you look on various forums on Facebook and Twitter. Have you been feeling, my goodness, this could actually be the end of our Premier League stint, or have you always been keeping the faith throughout it?
Naturally, I've never thought we'd go down in any season in the Premier League, even when we've had our bad runs.
Even in the first season, did you not think we would?
No, I didn't. I suppose there was that time when we lost heavily against Tottenham and Man City, and we had that week where things looked a bit poor. And I think we could have. I think maybe it crossed my mind then, but there was still too long in the season to go. That was October time, wasn't it? This is probably, I still don't think we'll go down, because I still think we will. Eddie normally finds a way and we'll put a system together that will get some results. But it's probably the most nervous I've been, because I think there has to be such a dramatic shift from the West Ham game. Yeah. So in other seasons we might have been scraping, other teams were scraping results against us, or we were a little unlucky. We've been so out of it since Crystal Palace, really, haven't we?
But are there 3 worse teams in the Premier League?
Well, this is the other problem that we've got. So if you want another reason for being slightly pessimistic, the new manager bounce hasn't worked in previous seasons. In the last couple of seasons, I don't think not as much. You now look at it. Watford look in supreme form. I know they drew yesterday, but they made 9 changes. I think they look in supreme form. So I think Norwich are the team that are looking dead and buried. Aston Villa had that morale boosting win last week. They will spend in the January window, because they've got massive backing. So you do look at it and just think, Norwich probably look the worst side in it, and look how well they played against Spurs.
Yeah,
we're the side not playing well. That's the problem. We have to change that around.
Do you think Eddie should be looking at new signings in the transfer window? I know we've got Brad Smith back on loan. Sam Surridge also come back, committed his future to the club with a 4.5-year deal, but should he really be looking, and if so, what positions do you think we should be strengthening in?
I mean, Brad Smith and Sam Surridge aren't the players to keep you in the Premier League. Brad Smith isn't, full stop. Sam Surridge hopefully will be that player in time. Certainly he looks like he has a lot of potential, but he's not the player for now. He might come on and do something. So I think we do need to strengthen. I'm not sure if the board will give the cash or have got the cash, because there's been a lot of noises from Eddie. I think there's a couple of interesting things playing out. There's the fact that Eddie's not signed a contract, which I think is adding to the whole picture of uncertainty around the club.
Fraser,
because
Eddie Howe,
Nathan Ake rumours, Callum Wilson rumours. I think these are things that we've not had before. And why is he not signing a contract? What is putting him off? Because he's always been someone that signed a contract giving him 2-3 years. Clear. So clearly the players will be aware of that. Something's happening with that. He's mentioned that he doesn't think there's going to be anything money-wise on the signings. They've given him 85 million quid, haven't they, in the last calendar year? Yeah. You could be quite harsh and say that he didn't use that 85 million quid to bring oven-ready Premier League players in, and we might now be bearing the fruits of that. So it may well be that they're saying, well, we don't want to give you another 30 or 40 million quid because you've had all the cash. Yeah. We probably our turnover. I mean, you get 105 million, don't you, for TV money?
Yeah, that's right.
We'll get nothing out of gate money.
Yeah.
If we've used 85 million on signings, the rest will be. There's a lot of wages in that. I mean, Jermaine Defoe, we still pay 4 million quid a year to play for someone else. So it's. I don't think we'll get the money. If we did get the money, he needs a forward and a winger, I would say. I think if Nathan Ake comes back and stays, we've got enough. Lloyd Kelly's close to getting fit, Adam Smith's close to getting fit. Where we've not sparked is a centre forward scoring goals and a winger.
Do you think the league position is a factor when they're thinking, shall we give Eddie money or not? Because obviously if we're sitting in the top 10, then, well, there's no need. But surely in this position, you'd think, give him 10 million or something just to get someone in.
If they've got it. Because we don't know what Max's intentions are. Does he want to stay around? The Americans have pulled out. Yeah. It doesn't look like the stadium's happening, and I'm painting a picture of doom here.
Yeah, but
you don't.
Let's be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. If you give someone 10 million, you've got to sign a player that's going to join a football club, thinking that football club might get relegated. So they're going to have a clause put in their contract that says, this is your wages, but next year it might be half of that or a quarter of that. And that's that. I think when Eddie says it's difficult, that's what he means, because you're really going for people that. I mean, what sort of players fit into that category that you really want? That's the problem that we've got. Whereas I think if you're top 10, like last season, we were in a good position. We signed Mepham, we signed Solanke because they both saw us as a club that was going to be Premier League. Yeah. I think now we're in a different position for us.
I think Nathan Ake, I saw on Twitter, I think a parent managed to embarrass her kids by approaching him in public somewhere.
Morrison's or something
something like that, yeah.
I was just more disappointed he wasn't in Waitrose. A man of his wages should not be shopping in the supermarkets the rest of us shop in.
No, exactly. But she said, when are you likely to be back? And he said, hopefully for Watford. But what are the chances it will be in an AFC Bournemouth shirt his next match? Because obviously there seem to be more teams interested in him by the day. And you'd think, even if you're Chelsea, even if you don't want him, you've got first refusal, 40 million.
Yeah.
You could buy him and then sell him the next day for 50, 60 maybe.
Yeah. Which is what Wolves did with Benicofo.
Yeah, so why wouldn't they?
Well, I think they will,
yeah.
but only time will tell.
Do you think he gets a say in where he wants to go? I presume he does.
Yeah, I think he would, but I think if he... he's not a Bournemouth fan.
No.
He didn't grow up here, so I think he will. He's got a short career. He could get injured, so I think players will always look after themselves. And I think if a bid comes in for him, he will go. I would imagine. I don't see why he would stay and play out the season if someone came along and offered him a significant increase in his wages and a place in a club that's got European football. But why would he not take that? I mean, he would be mad not to take that.
He's a big fish in a small pond at AFC Bournemouth. If he was to be re-signed by someone like Chelsea, do you think he'd be a player that would be content to sit on the bench? Because he might not. Well, there would be a lot more competition than what there would be at Dean Court.
I think he would trust himself to get into the Chelsea side or the Arsenal side, because they're the two clubs linked with him, because neither have got a great defence. I think if Liverpool or Man City were linked with him, I think he would know he would be going there as a third or fourth choice, and that's a different decision for him to make. But I think he would, if you look at the Chelsea or Arsenal sides that we've seen them recently, he's better than what they've got. So I think he would know that he would go back and play.
And are there any other players that you're worried about maybe leaving the club in January, or do you think we'll keep hold of them?
I don't think with the form we're in, the only player, if you watched us, that you would be interested in signing would be Jefferson Lerma. I think we could probably got enough leverage over him to say you can stay and see the year out. And then I think Jefferson Lerma's the type of player that probably won't give a club more than 2 or 3 years anyway. I think he's on a upwards career path, and I think he would also do very well in a top 6 or 7 Premier League club.
So moving on then, obviously the Watford game. What are you feeling about these next tranche of games? Because there are ones that are winnable there, but we've said this before, haven't we?
Yeah, we like we said earlier, it's the most unpredictable of seasons. I don't know what the lineup's going to be for Watford. I don't know what Bournemouth side are going to turn up. It's going to need to be a good one because Watford are probably top 6 or 7 in form at the moment. They are winning every week. They've stumbled upon a system that works really well for them. I think they've got Troy Deeney back, who is a player that continental managers there hasn't used in the way that he was used before. I think Nigel Pearson has built a team around him. He's a man for a relegation battle, Troy Deeney. He's a player I always wish we'd signed over the years. And they've got 2 very quick players playing off him, on Delafeu and Sarr, I think, on the other side. Yeah. And Capoue just behind. So as a front 4, they've got everything. So they will test our defence where they're slightly weak. Although he's tightened it up at the back. He's tightened it up at the back just by getting them to attack. So their back 4 are less exposed than they were. So if we can get at them, it'll be with pace at the back because their centre halves aren't quick. But what we'll have to watch out for is those front 4.
Do you think that Nigel Pearson's a bit of an underrated manager, given that he quite potentially put the groundwork in for the Tinkerman when he took over at Leicester, only to take the credit when they won the league? What are your thoughts on him?
Well, he did a brilliant job. I think he rallies a team. You've got a selection of managers out there that are relegation avoidance specialists, haven't you? And what they do is they put a team together and they rally that team. Alan Pardew's done it a number of times. Sam Allardyce's done it a number of times. It's when they then get given a consistent run at a club. They can't repeat that, because I think that's you get everyone fired up to go over the trenches is a short-term management technique, isn't it? And I think so with Pearson, Leicester were poor before Ranieri took over again. He did a brilliant job, and then results weren't going his way, otherwise he wouldn't have lost his job, would he? So
would you have ever thought that AFC Bournemouth should be going that technique down that route and getting rid of Eddie and getting a specialist in, or have you always stuck by Eddie as being the man to get us out of this mess that we seem to be in?
I think we're a unique club. I think to get rid of Eddie would be, we're not a side that has had a number of identities over a year. I think it would be too much of a risk. I think what will be really interesting is the end of this season, because I think Eddie, well, I love Eddie to bits. There's certain things he has to change if he's going to be a long-term success in his own career, I think, and in the Premier League. And I think he has to look more outside a small group of friends that have done him very well. He's still got, I think Richard Hughes is his best friend, does all of the transfer deals. Jason Tyndall and him are very, very close. Stephen Purchase, they all played together in one League One side. And my criticism of Eddie has always been that he expanded the playing staff, but he didn't really expand the thought processes around that. I think he needs a strong director of football that he could appoint, that could work with him on transfers, and just take some of that burden off him, because he looked after the West Ham like an exhausted man, but he is still running the club like a League One club, where the manager, because they have no money, has to do everything. And I don't understand why he still, it's almost like he won't let go of that control, and I think he's now exhausted, and we're not probably doing as well as we should. If he was a guy that had just joined us and been with us for the last 2 years, we'd be saying he needs to go. But in terms of my opinion of him, it's a unique club. A new manager wouldn't make us better. I think my belief is they will make us worse. They wouldn't understand us. And I think he's the man to keep us out of it. But he has to, if we do stay up and he wants to stay, then I think he probably has to approach things differently next season.
There's a lot of people on Twitter that sort of mention, it's Eddie's friends and his backroom staff. You're looking at players like Connell, Purchase, Tyndall, of course. Not so much Richard Hughes, because he may have had Premier League experience with Portsmouth, not too sure at the time, but well, as a player, of course. But are they equipped in terms of their CVs to be doing what they do for AFC Bournemouth, a Premier League club? Because we seem to be adverse to getting Premier League ready coaches in.
Yeah, I mean, I think all the Alan Connell, all the youth ones, that's fine, because they do certain qualifications. You bring in young players through. I think that's quite common in a lot of clubs. You'll see how ex-pros done. In terms of the first team squad, I've always just believed you need a blend. You need people that understand the history of a club and what's important. But it is too far a stretch of the imagination to think that the whole coaching squad for a Premier League team should be a group of people that played together in League One 10 years ago. That's just too much of a stretch. There is no logic behind that. And yes, they did so well, but if you look at the players they did so well with, they were players of similar limited things. That they were working with people with limited skills, making them an awful lot better. People like Mark Pugh and Simon Francis would never have believed they could have been Premier League players, but they had a group of coaches that were brilliant at working with players like that. I don't think they've got the best out of people like Jordan Ibe, Nathaniel Klein, all of these players that we've seen that have come with a big pedigree, Jermaine Defoe. They didn't develop those players. What they were brilliant at working is people like David Brooks, who's a young British, came from the lower leagues. Ramsdale, young British, came from the lower leagues. But if you're going to sign, you have to be able to sign players from further afield and outside of that. And I don't think we've got the scouts that find them. And then when we do find them, I don't think we have the systems for them to play in that they understand, that we don't work with them properly. And you'll only get that from signing a coach or one coach as part of a blend that understands that. That's just my opinion.
And Jordan Ibe, some of Eddie's quotes were rather telling in terms of why he wasn't being picked yesterday. He didn't, of course, show the real reasons, but do you think his time's done at AFC Bournemouth? It seems it.
Oh God, yeah. If Eddie is the least, is the manager who's least likely to throw a player under the bus of any manager I've ever seen. I mean, sometimes I think, how does he still come out and not publicly slay his players? He's fantastic at it, which is I think why they're so loyal to him. But you could just tell with it was a read between the lines masterclass, and I think it's not right that we speculate on air as to why that is, but he won't play again for us.
No. Okay, so who's going to play against Watford then, do you think? Can you predict what you think's going to happen? I mean, I think the defence probably will right itself, but then the midfield, there's obviously a number of positions up for grabs. If we do play 5 across the midfield, who will be missing out in the centre?
You can't. So there's two things. You've got the side that I think might play, and then there's the side that I play. Well, So what I think Eddie will do, it depends, because we don't know who's coming back. So there's rumours that Nathan Ake might be back from our correspondent in Morrison's. I think I still can't believe he doesn't shop in Waitrose. So I think the back four will largely pick itself. If Smith and Ake are back, they'll play with Cook and Rico. I think if they're not back, it'll be Francis Mepper. But I think we'll see a back four, and it will be as strong as returning injury allows it to be. My gut feel is that Eddie will play Fraser on one wing and Harry Wilson on the other, coming narrow, and with the fullbacks attacking. I think he will play 2 in midfield. I think he'll play Gosling and Lerma. And I think Billing and Cook will be on the bench, and then I think he'll play Solanke behind Callum Wilson. That would be the one I would lay my money on. But like we said, it's an unpredictable season.
Can I get a prediction from you then at this point? I mean, it's very futile doing all these predictions because it never works out. But what are your thoughts ahead of it?
I just got a bad. I hate saying it. I hate saying it. And I'd love to be proved wrong. I just think when you see a side as on fire as Watford are, I think it's too big a step for us to go from that West Ham performance to playing brilliantly enough to beat them. So I think it might be a draw. I think we might even lose it with a late goal. But I pray to God that I'm wrong. I just think it's a game too soon. I'd have liked another game. Maybe a game that was one that we weren't expected to win against a side not quite as fiery for us to get back on track and then play Watford. I just think from the West Ham to Watford, that's a leap. So I hope I'm wrong, but I can't see us winning. What do you think?
I'm gonna go for a 2-1 win. I hope so. I just think that's at some point things have got to come together. This run that we've been on cannot last much longer than what it is, and if it does continue, we deserve to go down. We deserve it. So, but I just can't. I mean, I was looking at the Southampton run under Ronald Koeman. It was very similar. I think 10 games where they had a win and a draw chucked in there, but it was just a series of losses, and they stuck with him. And eventually it was turned around. I think Eddie, will be the man to bring us out of the mire. I think 2-1 to Bournemouth. So that's what we're going for. Neil, thank you very much for being on the podcast again.
Thank you.
And yeah, let us know what you think about Watford, what team you'd like to see put out, and also your predictions. Just pop them in the comments below. And remember, if you want to listen to the full audio podcast, which includes a lot of trivia and a lot more, then do just search for Back of the Net Bournemouth on your favourite podcast app. And fingers crossed we'll pick up 3 points on Saturday at Watford. Up the Cherries.
Up the Cherries.
Back of the Net!